Welcome to Beyond Six Figures, the podcast that helps business coaches to micro-niche, get noticed, and become fully booked. Learn from top industry leaders who've successfully taken their businesses and their lives beyond six figures. Get ready to level up your coaching business and make this world a better place, one business at a time. And now, here's your host, Ziv Raviv.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond Six Figures. Our guest today is Alan P. Brown, founder of Crusher Coaching and the creator of ADD Crusher, a program helping adults with ADHD become entrepreneurs who get the right things done. Alan is not only a productivity expert, he's also a former ad exec, a multi-startup founder, and someone who built and still operates with 7 revenue streams while designing his business around how his own brain works, overcoming addiction, learning challenges, and late ADHD diagnosis. He's now helping coaches and solopreneurs scale with less stress and more clarity. And I'm really excited to talk with you, Alan, because many of my clients, myself, are going through, their own lives with ADHD, and it's a difficult thing to do. A lot of entrepreneurs have this. So it's such an important conversation to have today. Hello, Alan P. Brown. How are you?
Ziv, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So I want to start with what you consider as your origin story. We all have an origin story that we share on our trainings, on our webinars. I want to give an opportunity for everyone to listen to yours. How did you get to build all of this?
Well, I was in the advertising business, as you mentioned, for many years. And I struggled, particularly in my first 6 or so years, which, by the way, I didn't start my career. I didn't get my first real job until I was almost 30 years old because I didn't know I had ADHD. And like many undiagnosed adults with ADHD, I was self-medicating. I was abusing alcohol and I was using stimulant drugs. I was really kind of a mess. It took me 10 years to get a 4-year degree. Once I finally did, I got into the advertising business. And again, the first 6 years or so, I was really kind of just floundering, making very slow progress. And at some point, about 5 years in, I started to listen to some audiobooks. I'm not a very good reader. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which most of our listeners have heard of, but also some Deepak Chopra, where I learned about the fact that the noise in our brain isn't really us. It's a lot of, judgment and chitter chatter and worries and ruminations, et cetera. And so once I tuned into that to be more of a witness to the voice in my head, I was able to see how busy it was and how it wasn't really productive for me. And I was able to sort of quiet my mind a little bit. That was the beginning of being able to better understand how my brain sort of worked and didn't work so well. And then right around, not long after that time, I got the diagnosis of ADHD. And a lot of folks are feel stigmatized about getting that diagnosis. Oh, I'm broken. What's wrong with me? I just want to be normal, et cetera. But for me, it was a revelation. It was a hallelujah because all of a sudden I understood why I took so long to do things, why my brain was so busy, and also why I was self-medicating throughout much of my 20s. So the thing that brought me to what I'm doing now is kind of interesting because as soon as I got got the diagnosis, I literally ran out of the doctor's office. I was living and working in Manhattan, ran out of the doctor's office and went over to the Barnes and Noble's bookstore. I don't know if everybody remembers bookstores. It's a building with books in it. And so I ran over, and you can actually walk inside them. So I walked into this bookstore and I bought, 4 or 5 books on adult ADHD. This is the late 90s, so I was kind of comforting to know that there were some. Most of the ADHD stuff was about kids. But anyway, I get home and I opened the first of the 4 or 5 books, and I remember, oh, that's right, I'm a terrible reader. Did a little research. 30% of ADDers are dyslexic, and the majority of the other 70% just have terrible reading comprehension. That is me. And so I thought, after struggling with these books that were 393 pages with no cartoons and no bullet points, that maybe somebody should have a product that helps ADHD adults and teens also to learn coping skills and strategies and tips that doesn't require them to read, but also might be a little bit entertaining, animated, a little interactive. And so I got the idea for ADD Crusher at that time. I continued on my journey in advertising with this diagnosis, and by working a bunch of strategies that I began to develop, I went from a kind of lowly account executive. Again, I was like 36 years old at the time, which I looked younger than my age. So nobody realized that I was 8 years older than everybody else in my peer group. But I went from this sort of lowly account executive making 40, 50 grand to six figures, vice president and employee of the year at what was the biggest ad agency in the country at that time. And that was in very large part due to the diagnosis and proper treatment. So once I sort of really found my footing in the advertising business, I started to make some good money. I actually did take a break for a few years to co-found a startup that was later sold successfully, and got back into advertising and realized that it was time now for me to create this product. And so I did this in my spare time, created it. We launched it in 2012. And that was the beginning of what is now, as you mentioned, actually more than 7 revenue streams that I operate at the moment. So it was a kind of hitting the bottom with ADHD and then making a discovery and then working the program.
So I want to, for the sake of the listener that maybe is thinking right now, he has this light bulb moment and he's thinking, maybe I have ADHD too. Maybe I'm sometimes procrastinating. I'm feeling a little bit like this is relevant to me, like what you experience is kind of what I'm experiencing. So what would you recommend to your clients these days if they want to check if this is relevant for them?
First of all, if anyone tells you, hey, everybody's got ADHD these days, which you could argue has some truth in it, but the reality is that if you are battling ADHD in reality, it is affecting the quality of your life. You know that you could be doing much better. You know that you could be living more to your potential, but chronic procrastination, inability to manage time, difficulty prioritizing, et cetera, et cetera. So what I invite folks to do before you run off to a doctor, do a self-diagnosis quiz. There are a bunch of them around. I've got one on the ADD Crusher website. You can go to addcrusher.com and you'll see, just scroll down a little bit and you'll see a quiz. It just asks about 5 or 6 questions and it gives you a directional basis for whether you might want to go, okay, you know what, I think I'm going to call my doctor and see if they can get me into a specialist. Ideally, you want to meet with a psychiatrist who specializes in ADHD diagnosis. So because there are a lot of general practitioners that still kind of don't get it or who may write it off as well, sleep deprivation, or you just need more protein or whatever. So there's my advice on that.
Moving forward, I want to paint a picture for the listener about your program, because you've been running it for a while now, and some of your participants, your students, your clients that went through the ADD Crusher specifically, I know you have a few other offerings that helps with that, and we will get to that too. But just the actual ADD Crusher, what are some interesting, inspiring results that your clients have received with it?
Well, I just got a note from someone who said, this is just yesterday, who said, I can't thank you enough, and I'm trying to remember the words, I can't thank you enough for helping me pivot into a new trajectory in my life. And I don't want to boast or overstate, but when someone is treated and properly coached around ADHD, like me, it completely changed my life. And so that's one of the wonderful things about being a coach is that you can really have an impact on someone's life. And I think in particular, when you are helping someone with ADHD, when you yourself understand it. I've gotten a lot of testimonials of people saying, well, my husband had been struggling a great deal and we worked your program and now he understands his own brain better. And he is not procrastinating as much. And importantly, our relationship is a little bit better now and less fraught with stress, et cetera. Because that's another thing that happens with ADHD is that it can really affect our relationships. It has caused many, many divorces. And getting this thing attended to can really help with all of your relationships. It certainly did for me.
I want to go a little bit deeper on this topic of dealing with ADHD in business as an entrepreneur, because the listener right now might be a business coach that suspects that some of their clients maybe are struggling with it. Even if they're not diagnosed, they might already know from, like, there are signs that they notice and so on. So what are some examples for tools or tips, some low-hanging fruit, some quick wins that you can give to our listeners that will help them to be more productive?
Okay. I'm going to start as unsexy as possible, Ziv. Okay. And this is actually where I start in the ADD Crusher program. I start with feeding your brain right. What I mean by that is that whether we have ADHD or not, if we are not getting a good diet, mainly fueling our brain mainly with protein, staying away from processed sugars, simple carbs, those do not fuel our brain for any more than a few minutes. That's why we keep reaching for another handful of this or that. But when we are having a good bit of protein with some fiber and complex carbs on a regular basis, we will have much better mental stamina. The same goes for exercise. If we are not getting out and moving and hopefully breaking a sweat 3 times a week or more, our brain will not perform at the same level as if we are doing that. I work out 6 times a week. It's nothing crazy, 30, 45 minutes on a stationary cycle with some light weights. And I can feel the difference when I am not doing that, when I am off for a few days, which is very rare now. And then sleep. I mean, I've worked with so many folks who are busy entrepreneurs, or they're just a busy mom or dad. And at the end of the day and late in the evening, they finally get that time to themselves and they do what's known as revenge procrastination. They say, well, I've been serving everyone else all day and now I get to have my time. And what do? They get on a device and they are now up until 1 a.m. or whatever. And then they're having difficulty getting up the next day, or they are shortchanging themselves on sleep. And a sleep deficit has the same effects, the same symptoms for the most part as ADHD. Difficulty with time management. You have lower energy. You are not able to think as clearly or think in a focused way for as long, et cetera. So I'm just saying to all our friends out there, if you're not getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, quality sleep every night, please attend to that. That's just for starters. I want to share a couple of other things that fit in with your question here. And I'm going to start with a little sort of a Buddhist notion, if you will. I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle, who wrote a wonderful book called The Power of Now. He was made famous by Oprah Winfrey. She was part of her book club. But when we, especially us ultra busy, especially solopreneurs, right? We're wearing all the hats. We're on any given day, there are 500 things we could choose from to do. And often we feel overwhelmed. I was just working with someone this morning who's just completely overwhelmed, doesn't know which way is up, et cetera. So it's very common. And what happens when we get really overwhelmed and we sit down and maybe look at our to-do list or our calendar, or just think about what we have to do, there's a certain bit of stress that happens. And when that stress happens, what happens is that the cortisol that we naturally produce starts to get higher in production, and it actually reduces the oxygen to our frontal cortex, because cortisol is a fight or flight mechanism that actually reduces oxygen to your brain and sends more oxygen to your outer limbs so you can fight. True. But that just makes it more difficult to think about what I should be doing, let alone to get to work on it. So what I invite folks to do, and again, we just did this morning with a new client who is a high-end insurance broker. And what we talked about was, when you have this feeling of overwhelm, just try to pause and ask yourself, is there any problem right here in the now? Like right now, Ziv and I are speaking, ask yourself, is there anything on your to-do list that is about to bite you in the butt, or that has to get done in the next hour or 3 hours or even day? Because most of the time, that will not be the case, that something has to happen right now. And yet, when we look at our to-do list, we view it as a bunch of threats, a bunch of problems that need to get dealt with, and I got to figure out which one to deal with, et cetera. So just pausing and asking yourself, are any of these things a problem in the now? And the answer is almost always, no, there's no problem here in the now. I had a little sticky on my computer for many, many years, actually, in one form or another, just said, there's no problem here and now. Just to remind me, Alan, everything's going to be okay. You slept last night for 8 hours and you did nothing. And then you woke up this morning to look at your list of to-dos and you said, oh my God, these are all problems. They weren't a problem 8 hours ago. Anyway, that's a real powerful way to alter your brain chemistry, to reduce the cortisol and give yourself a little bit of relief. I call that a brain hack. Anything that you do where you change the way you view something or you shift a mindset that then changes your neurochemistry and your body chemistry, that's a brain hack. And there are many, many ways to do that. So there's one of them. I got a few more things, but I wanted to pause and see if you have any thoughts on that.
First of all, I think that the sleep deprivation thing is actually so important to be aware of, because it's kind of like a chicken and an egg situation. Because if you have ADHD, you might actually have problems in falling asleep. You might actually busying yourself into procrastination or into like all these ideas that are shiny objects of sorts. And then you don't sleep so much. And then it actually is harder for you, especially when you don't get enough sleep. And then you lose focus. You go for your phone for a dopamine hit. You go for the snacks. And in both cases, it's something that is self-habituating cycle where you keep on depriving yourself with more sleep and you acknowledge that it's okay. One person that I had the pleasure of talking to about this, he would sometimes go to sleep at 4 a.m., wake up for walking in his day job. It's 10 or so. That's not enough hours of sleep for a good solid 7 or 8 hours of brain recovery of sorts. And sometimes he would like just go into this spree of cleaning up in the middle of the night because he remembered, oh, I should probably do this. I'll probably put this in order and whatnot. And that's like, you don't ever even know if you have an ADHD issue if you didn't first solve your lack of sleep, your habits issue.
Well said. Well said. Everything you said. And it's not just chicken and egg, because if you're messing up your sleep again, it could give you ADHD-like symptoms. But you're right. With ADHD, you are more likely to have bad sleep habits. So it's kind of a double whammy. You've got ADHD to begin with, and then you're not getting enough quality sleep. And now your ADHD is made worse.
Yeah. That's a painful cycle. So what are some other things that people should be aware of that might give them some moments of productivity?
So I do something 2, 3, 4 times a day. Most of what I do for a living is write. And I mentioned I'm a very slow reader, but I'm also a very slow writer. And unfortunately, for better or worse, I've been basically writing for a living since I started in the advertising business. And it's really hard for me. What happens when we're confronted with something that we would rather not be doing is that what I call our outlaw brain will come in and negotiate and say, hey, Alan, this is really hard. Why don't let's do this other thing over here. Just because this is easier, let's do this over here, or let's do that, or let's go clean up the kitchen, or let's go down the hall and chat with so-and-so. It's really in our DNA, actually, but it's even worse for an ADHD brain, where we just subconsciously want to avoid the difficult thing. And then once we get engaged in a difficult thing, we want to get out of it. So what we'll do is we'll sort of subconsciously look for things to do first or to be distracted by. Oh, my phone just vibrated. Let me just check that. Now I've just exited the difficult task I was trying to keep moving on. Now I've gone out of this and now, here's my wife checking in with me. I mean, literally right now I'm looking at my phone. I could text her back, or I could say, no, I'm going to do that a little bit later and I'm going to come back to what I'm doing. So here's a way to try to reinforce the desire to stay in a task. And what I do is, this is something that I call do what you're doing now. Do what you're doing now. Because the ADHD brain wants to do all kinds of things all the time, except for the difficult things. So when I sit down to do a work session, and I call them work sessions because I want my work sessions to be defined by the one thing I'm going to work on. In other words, a single tasking session, not a multitasking, but a work session, a single tasking session. So what I do is, and I'm holding this up, I've got a little packet of stickies here that I keep around all the time. And I've just written on a blank sticky the words to do. So I'm looking at, my brain is seeing now a to-do list with nothing on it, right? So that helps reduce my cortisol right there. This is supported in the research. I don't do any theoretical or woo-woo stuff. This is real. And what I want to do is I want to get my to-do list and my planner and my phone out of my line of sight. I don't want to even look at them peripherally because they will remind me of all the undone to-dos. I just want to see this in my line of sight along with my computer screen, let's say. So I'll then write the one thing that I've decided I need to work on. Ideally, it's a difficult thing, right? So now I've got a to-do list. I've just written one thing, the words one thing there. It could be, finish your presentation or whatever. And now I've got a to-do list with one thing on. And then what I do is, and this again is from the research, I'm going to make what's known as an assertive declaration. I'm not just going to say, okay, that's what I'm doing, let's go. I'm going to pause and I'm going to say, that's what I'm doing now. That one thing is what I'm doing now. Anything else that comes into my brain or across my line of sight or on my phone is BS because it's not what I'm doing now. If something pops up and it's important or I remember something that is important, no problem. I'll take another sticky and I'll write a reminder of that thing. I'll scribble that on another sticky and then I'll put it on my phone upside down. My phone is upside down. I'll put it on the back of my phone. Why? What's the first thing I do when I finish my work session? I'm going to go grab my phone like every other human being, right? All the other 8 billion people. But now I don't have to worry about this thing that's on the back of my phone. Now it's over here. It's back over in my outside my peripheral vision. So I've made an assertive declaration. I've made a declaration that says, this is the thing I'm working on now. And then in addition to, and I don't want to jump ahead because I do want to talk about a work session ritual, but I will then set a timer. And for that 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever is available to me, whatever I think is necessary, and then I go. And what I've done by doing this ritual, so to speak, is that I've created a little bit of a sort of a force field, if you will, around me and this task and this computer. I will be now less likely to jump out of this thing for something that I remembered or some buzz goes off or a ding goes off. I will be less likely to interrupt myself because I've made a bigger deal of this thing, and I've identified that one thing and made that assertive declaration. That, again, I use 2-3 times a day, sometimes 4, for every one of my single tasking sessions, and I do it just for my most difficult tasks.
I love it. This is kind of also in alignment with the idea of eat the frog first. There's a book about this concept where we start with the hard stuff. If you have to eat a frog every day, then do that first. And
yes.
That's what you'll put into your sticky note. And so you mentioned that there's some sort of a ritual for a walking session. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I want to say is that, I want to eat my frog first thing in the day, but that's also because that's my mentally strongest time. About 60% of humans have their mentally strongest time in the morning. Mine's 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. By the way, I block that off. I don't set appointments then. I don't take clients then. I don't run errands. It's blocked off 7 days a week. It's blocked off horizontally across my whole week. But the work session ritual, this little thing that I just shared is part of a work session ritual. But a work session ritual is something where, again, we make a big deal of the single tasking session we're going to do. And we also set ourselves up to not have to interrupt ourselves by needing to go to the bathroom or needing to get up and get more food or needing to top off our coffee. So what I do is, and I do my most difficult work upstairs in my attic. It's the quietest space. It's set up just for me doing that. But wherever you're working, what you want to do is you want to get hydrated. I'm sitting here with a 17-ounce bottle of water with some electrolytes. And so I will drink about half of this and then top it off. I will make sure that I'm a decaf coffee drinker, so I'll make sure that this is hot and I've got some plenty of coffee in there. I will make sure that I've got 20 grams of protein, ideally 20 plus grams of protein in my tummy. Before this, I ate a salad with 2 hard-boiled eggs so that I would have plenty of protein and fiber to help get me through this interview without going off the rails like my ADHD would otherwise want to do. And I set myself up with these things. And then I sit down and again, I'll do this exercise. This is what I'm doing now, make an assertive declaration. In my case, I also have a little bit of medication, which I make sure is there. And by making a bigger deal of my work session, I am less likely to be dragged out by some notion or some shiny thing or some thing that I realize I need to do, and it's easier than this, so let me go do that. So if every time you sat down for a serious work session, you did just something like this, you go to the bathroom, you take care of that, you get some food in you, protein, you hydrate and then fill that up, get your hot beverage of choice, and then sit down, make a commitment and an assertive declaration. You're going to have better work sessions. ADHD or not, by the way, you're going to have better work sessions that last longer, that stay more focused, etc.
I love it. Alan, you're an encyclopedia on this topic, and you help people not just through your program AdCrusher. You have a membership site where they can get ongoing support and ongoing education, and you have a group coaching program and an MMG program for coaches, and you even coach people privately, and you have a book, and there's so many things that people could leverage based on their needs. Where can people go to start their journey with treating their ADHD and actually just taking ownership of their journey and the results that they get?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share. And go to ADHD-crusher.com. You're going to find a few things there that might be of interest. One is, again, that quiz that takes about 60 seconds to do, and you'll get a directional idea of whether you might be ADHD. But whatever the outcome of that, there's also something, a little ebook there, a freebie, called 5 Things You're Doing Every Day That Make Your ADHD Worse. And whether you have ADHD or not, these are 5 things that we really shouldn't be doing. And so that's a handy little thing. I also have a little thing called Alan's Formula for Focus. And it's 5 things that I do as habits that help me stay focused, whether or not I have meds, because we ideally I do not want to have chemicals in my body that don't need to be there if I can help it. So I use less and less medication every year because I do more and more of the skills and the tools, et cetera. They say pills don't teach skills. So that's another thing that's available on the site. And I also have a little piece on the psychology of procrastination that might be of interest to some. And that's ADHD-crusher.com.
And we'll put that into the show notes, including all the links to your social media and everything else that you could find about Alan. Alan P. Brown, this is amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about an important topic that is relevant for so many of our business coaches, listeners. And thank you, everyone, for listening for another episode of Beyond Six Figures.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Six Figures. Check out the extended show notes that include bonus material, practical tips, and exclusive resources on our website, zivraviv.com. Until next time, keep dreaming big and pushing your business and your life beyond 6 figures.